Transport Department spokesperson Collen Msibi joins us now for a response to that which was raised by the Automobile Association. Ndlondlo, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time. Firstly, of course, this process has not gone on without glitches. Supposed to have even earlier this year been rolled out, and that process has been postponed at least once or twice. And now we are at a point where the bidder has been appointed, but service levels agreements are yet not in place, and we still don't know when that is going to be sorted out. Let's start firstly at the process. Out of the 5, why would you have gone with this particular company?
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and thanks for having us. You know, the whole process of having a tender in place, it is precisely that. It is to appoint one preferred bidder so that they can do the job. And that's exactly what we have done. And that's according to the Constitution, Section 217 of the Constitution. So we've done what we needed to do. I've yet to understand when AA says that we're not transparent. What exactly do they mean by that? This lady, I was listening now, she says they don't know how long is the contract going to be and the value of the contract. This is information that is in the public domain. You can go on the e-tender government portal. You will find it there. It's clear, it's 5 years and it's for 898 million. So we don't know what is this transparency that they are talking about. But well, be that as it may, the issue at Thabo is the country has been marred by this problem of having one machine to print the licenses for the country. And it has become such a problem. As we speak, we have about 380,000 driver's licenses on the backlog. So you tell me now, if we're trying to fast track the process so that we can be able to have a new system in place, and then you have these problems. And then they raise a number of issues, which, as far as we are concerned, the process for us has been above board. The probity process that we undertook, it was clear in terms of the conclusions. It said all the legislation and the policies were followed accordingly. So we are quite, when we do understand the issue of AXA, that there's been the issue of investigation and so forth. But from what we've seen and the statements we've seen from AXA, that seems to be a relationship gone sour between an SMME and IDEMIA. So the question is going to be, what's got to do with what we've done as a department, the investigation of AXA? And that's what we are going to be asked. And how are we going to respond when we say, okay, let's stall the process? So we are saying, as far as we are concerned, things are above board. There's going to be the process of the Auditor General. We are led by the National Treasury on this matter. They are holding our hand. So if there is any issues that needs to be revisited, we will hear from them what happens at the end of the day.
I suppose what tends to happen with these particular cases is that now and again then you will hear one of the other 5 or maybe all the other 4 going to court saying, furnish us with reasons why we would have been disqualified to be a part of this particular tender, and only this preferred bidder would be the one.
Of course, indeed. I mean, the tender, there's certain categories you need to look at in terms of the criteria, technical evaluation and all sorts of things. I wasn't part of the bidding committee, but you've got to go through all those processes, and hence the bidding committee comes to a conclusion to say this is the preferred one. So these are processes that are part of the supply chain management prescripts. So you can therefore not blame the department to say we're not I mean, the bidding committee processes are confidential in their nature. So we can't go and tell the nation what is happening there in the bidding, because we're also not part of it. There's certain members who are there, and they have to sign confidentiality issue. It's such a tight a program to run. So if you are saying, therefore, that we're not transparent, what do you mean? it clearly shows that you do not understand how government works.
So the issue then, and you've already alluded to it, part of the reason why they would wanted that transparency is because this, of course, happens on the eve of the AXA contractor being terminated. And one of the things cited there by AXA being that they suspect and investigate the prima facie evidence that suggests some maladministration of some sort in how this particular contract would have been handled. And that raises red flags, of course, for the AA and other players to say, how could then the Department of Transport turn around and appoint this very same company with some kind of cloud that is hanging around them?
Of course, we do understand that. The issue is that these investigations, they've taken each other to court, but does it have a bearing in terms of the process we undertook? Because it's as though now the process we undertook is not flawless. There's issues with it, and we would like to believe that has to be set. The record has to be set straight, because we believe that we followed the process accordingly. The issue of AXA, if it does happen that when they investigate and they tend to find certain things, would have to be guided by Treasury what happens next. We are not saying that we are turning a blind eye on the issue of AXA. Of course, it is a factor, but we need to see what happens out of that particular process. But we can't say we're going to have to stop everything now that there's this issue of AXA. Look, the reality is that the appointment happened on the 8th of August. And then we got to find out on the 27th of August that there's an issue at AXA. We had already appointed and we had already published who's going to be who is the preferred bidder, including the value and so on. So then to turn around and say, hey, wait a minute, there's an issue at AXA. Therefore, put it on hold. What do you then do to the person that you've told, we've appointed you?
Yeah.
So you've got to provide the reasons. Are you going to say it is because you are being investigated at AXA? So the question is, what does AXA has to do with what we've just done here with you?
Right.
So basically, that is a clear case of litigation. You're going to be taken to court. Hence, we are saying, let the investigation continue. We're moving on the basis of presumption of innocent until proven guilty. But secondly, we're saying that we'll be guided by Treasury. Whatever happens with the investigations, Treasury will have to guide us. But secondly, the issue of the Treasury in terms of the Chief Procurement Officer, in other words. And then there's an issue of the Auditor General, who must look at this matter. So we'll await the report of the Auditor General as well. So there is checks and balances. Those are the issues that we can. So we're not turning a blind eye on these issues, but we are saying there's other processes that would still have to take into account. Yeah. If the Auditor General says, wait a minute, there's a problem with this, we'll have to listen and to see how we then move on this thing. And
so are those the remaining issues that would, I suppose, at this point prevent you from having a service level agreement in place?
No, a service level agreement, it has nothing to do with the process of the Auditor General. Auditor General was going to anyway look at this particular bid. So it's not like it depends on what the Auditor General says. So the Auditor General is the guy that comes at the end to say, okay, let me see your processes. In fact, they come much later when you are already implementing, they come and audit you. So the service level agreement is something that we're going to be looking into in due course. It's not something that is going to wait for forever. But we are saying, hence I have to emphasize, we're saying that if there is an issue in terms of this investigation by AXA, then we would have to be guided by those who are the custodians of SCM prescripts in government, which is the Chief Procurement Officer, to say, what next?
yeah.
So they would have to guide us.
What's the delay, though, when the process has already been delayed by 5 months? It was April when you were supposed to roll out. You said May didn't roll out. Of course, we went into elections and so on and so forth. We are now in September. You still don't have a service level agreement in place because you've only just appointed the preferred bidder. So the process is already delayed. Why are you delaying it any further?
Well, maybe let me take you back. Cabinet approved our proposal to have a new driver's license card in August 2022.
That's right.
And then in November, we then advertised the tender to have a service provider appointed. That process didn't yield any result. It was unsuccessful. We couldn't find a suitable service provider. So we then advertised again in April, and the bid closed in April 2023, and it closed in May 2023. So from there, then we undertook this process of adjudication and evaluation, including the issues of audit, internal audit, and so forth. So it's not a quick job, and hence it has taken a bit of time for it to get to a point where we are able to appoint. So we've undertaken those processes. It's been a long one, and hence we've been pleading for patience, and we get to a point where we appoint, and then they start. And let me tell you, if we were to go, like AA is saying, we go to the government printers to say, let's use the government printers. Government printers, what people don't know, it uses service providers to print. So in other words, we're going to get through the back door to get the government printing to assist us. And you know what, in terms of, that is one of the things that Auditor General frowns upon. They really hate that because it simply means you are actually catching a lift on a tender that is already there. And the implications are that the scope of work is going to change. The amount or the value of that contract may change as well. So you are running into many troubles if you're trying to do a participation into a contract that already exists. Hence, for us, it was clear that we needed to follow a constitution which says that any goods and services in government, it must be put on tender, and that is what we have done. So we hear that AA is saying we should have gone to the government printers and all that. I mean, the government printers is not like it's public servants who are working there. It's service providers. So of which, when we advertised the tender, they had all the opportunity in themselves to put their bids. So they had that opportunity. I mean, even yourself, you had an opportunity, you had a company to put your bid.
Yes.
So why not an issue?
But the other issue that they're raising, more than this issue of the transparency, is also the question on why you still insist on a need for physical driver's license cards in the first place. They are seeing digitization happening to many of the functions that government provides. The public sector functioning, for example, at SARS, being one of the good examples they are citing. They're asking, why must the driving license cards be physical driver's license cards as opposed to, I suppose, the ability to be able to manage this system through fingerprints or something of that nature?
We are certainly looking at a digital license in the outer years. So that's for a future project that we're looking at. So the simple answer to you right now is ching, money. There's difficulty with that because it's quite a huge project that you're looking at. You must understand, once you have, let's say, for instance, you have your license on your phone. A law enforcement officer, when they stop you, they've got to have the gadget that is able to read your license and to say that it is indeed legit. So you can imagine the kind of investment into the infrastructure when you do that kind of work. It's quite big. So, but it is something that we are looking into the future. But for now, we believe that what is affordable for the country is what we are doing currently.
Right. So The minister would have, I suppose, taken for granted at the time when she would have made the commitment that this would be rolled out in April, later again to be rolled out in May. When are you looking to roll out the new driver's license cards?
Let me take you back to the service level agreement. That's where the timeframes are going to be defined. So once we're able to sign that service level agreement, we'll come back to the nation and say, here are the timeframes. This is when we expect to have that card. But let me also explain to you, part of what they need to do is to put an infrastructure in place, the systems in place, the hardware and the software. So it's quite an involved process. Secondly, once we have that in place and we're starting to print, when you build a new car, you must put it into test. You can't simply just put it on the road and start selling it. So we've got to do a test of the system. So we're going to have a pilot project running for about 6 or 8 months to ensure that everything is in place and it works properly before we can then say, now we are rolling it out. But thirdly, when we roll out, it's going to be phased over a number of years. It's not just going to be boom, everybody has it. So it's going to be phased in. If you recall the ID book, what happened when the ID cards were introduced. So we're looking at something like that to happen. So it's not necessarily, we have to be honest with the nation to say it's not something that's just going to happen overnight. We still have to have that period where they put all those infrastructure and the systems in place.
Ndlondlo, we appreciate your time. Thank you for your explanation tonight. That's the Department of Transport's spokesperson there, and giving us some understanding of all the processes that have been followed so far to get to this point. Right.